Hey, yo, what's up, everybody? Ryan Miller checking in with episode 72 of GST's Your Question, My Answer. Today's topic comes to me from Sara B, actually, and what she wants to know is, she wants to know about a topic that I've touched on in the past, but I feel like it's an important topic, and it really addresses the issue or fact that metabolic damage and metabolic adaptation, they're highly controlled by the user. They're highly controlled by the person who owns that metabolism. And so my metabolic adaptation is controlled by me. Sara, your metabolic adaptation is controlled by you. And on that same token, my metabolic rate, how many calories I burn per day, that's controlled by me strictly. And Sara, your metabolic rate, you have to understand, it's controlled by you. Now, there's two factors that determine a person's metabolic rate. Number one is something that we all have. It's the basal metabolic rate. And that's the amount of calories that we burn every day, going through that day, without any added activity. And so your basal metabolic rate is responsible for making sure that your body performs the things that it needs to keep you alive each day. Now, you don't have to go to the gym each day. You don't have to be physical or walk around at work each day. And so those activities aren't included in a person's basal metabolic rate. Those aren't necessary for life. And so the basal metabolic rate, that is simply the amount of calories you burn per day on the processes that are necessary to keep you alive. That's it. Now, that's the first factor. And the second factor is what you do on top of that basal metabolic rate. So going to the gym, burning those calories in the gym, getting up in the morning and making breakfast, getting dressed, getting yourself to work, doing your work. Those are all calorie burning activities. They're not necessary for you to live that day, but they are activities that you took part in, and those activities require energy, and that energy is in the form of calories burned. So you have the BMR, the basal metabolic rate, and then you have the part that you can really control the most, and that's that additional activity. And when you add those up together, it results in a term called the total daily energy expenditure. And it's a basic term. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it's descriptive. It's the total energy that you expend, or the total amount of calories that you burn daily, so each day. Now, each of these two factors has the ability to increase or decrease. And so it's a two-part equation when you're talking about how you can make your metabolic rate as high as possible. And Sara, you're wondering how some people can burn so many more calories than some other people. And now what these people have done is they've maximized their metabolic rate in each of these factors. And so one, with the basal metabolic rate, anytime you are eating in a calorie deficit, there's going to be some metabolic adaptation that occurs, and it decreases your metabolic rate. Now, it can be as simple as that. Obviously, it's a lot more in-depth on why that happens and how your body does that, but that really doesn't matter for this discussion. What matters for this discussion is that if you want to maximize your basal metabolic rate, you should not be in a calorie deficit. People are going to burn, they're going to have the highest natural metabolic rate, or a basal metabolic rate that's not downregulated when they're in an energy surplus. They're supplying with all the nutrients that it needs and then some. So your body is not believing that it's in a state of not starvation, but it's in an energy deficit or a calorie deficit. It's not going to try and preserve or reserve anything. When you're in a surplus, there's excess energy. And so you don't have any of those negative effects that result in a decreased basal metabolic rate, which is often known as metabolic adaptation. On the other hand, when you're talking about the other side of the equation, which I mentioned was the added activity that you're also in full control of, if you want to increase your metabolic rate per day, I say this often, and a lot of times I wonder if people actually really get it when I say it, because it sounds too easy and too simple. And I think a lot of people try to overcomplicate things and almost reinvent the wheel when it doesn't have to be reinvented. So if you want to burn more calories per day, you just need to do more. And when I say that, I think that people just don't really understand, or they don't get it because it's too simple. If you want to increase your metabolic rate, just burn more calories. And that means do more work, do more physical activity, lift more, walk more, run more, do anything more, and you will have burned more calories that day, and you will have increased your metabolic rate for that day. So that is the part of the equation that you can really control it. You can control it very quickly, very easily. You can choose to burn calories, or you can choose to not burn calories. You can choose to be inactive or active. Obviously, being active outside of the gym and inside of the gym increases your metabolic rate. So if you are wondering how those people, those athletes with real high metabolic rates that you might believe are just naturally high, they actually aren't naturally high. Those people force their metabolic rate to be high through being highly active, usually every day. Also, they generally hold more muscle mass, and that's just through the years of hard work that they've put in. And increased muscle mass does increase total daily energy expenditure. But the main point here is that these people do more, and so they burn more. It's not like their basal metabolic rates are running that much hotter than anybody else's. It's that the added activity on top of that basal metabolic rate is so much more than everybody else's, or it's more than the average person's. Sarah, essentially it's more than yours, because you're wondering how people that are probably really similar to you in terms of body composition or body weight, how can these people burn so many more calories than you every single day? And the reason is they're just simply, they're more active than you. And right now I know that you are eating in a bit of a calorie deficit, and so you are going to have some metabolic adaptation going on that's slowing down your BMR slightly, but really the key there is the overall added activity, and these people are just doing more than you. And so if you want to be one of those people that can consume so many calories per day and not gain weight from it, you really just have to burn more calories per day. And anybody else watching this video also has to understand that you can look at metabolism in the way that I've talked about it today, having that BMR as one side of it, and then having the added activity on top of that BMR on the other side. And you can manipulate both, but you can manipulate the added activity level so much more. It's instantaneous. Manipulating your BMR takes time, and it's dependent on the type of nutritional phase that you're in. If you are in a long-term or a calorie deficit, you're not going to be able to maximize your daily BMR. It's just not going to happen, because you have to add calories and hit that surplus in order to do that. And when you're in a fat loss phase, that's just not going to happen. So in a fat loss phase, the main factor that you can use to control how many calories you burn per day is your added activity level. When you're in a surplus, your BMR is running faster or quicker than when you're in a calorie deficit, but also the main factor that you can use to increase your daily metabolic rate is to add activity through added activity. It's obvious. All right, Sarah, and everybody else watching, maybe I was a little bit repetitive in this video, but I want to drill these concepts in, because people have this skewed idea of metabolism and how it can become damaged and how it takes forever to repair, and how if they've done something wrong, if they've dieted for 6 months poorly, they've screwed everything up for years to come, and it's just not the case. Our bodies are more adaptive than that. We are more complex than that, and if you just use a common sense approach to metabolism and trying to manipulate it, you can really do big things. Thank you everybody for watching. My name is Ryan Miller. This has been GST's Your Question, My Answer, episode number 72 on manipulating the metabolic rate. As always, I appreciate the views.